if you're building a network. You kind of want to make sure that you are attracting people that have complementary skills and leveraging those skills. It's important as a leader to try to identify those strengths and those talents and put them to best use.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hind, and we are here on this podcast to help pour into those in the direct selling industry. We're passionate about seeing this industry grow one person at a time. There's no accident you're listening to this episode today, and I truly believe that if you want to grow your business, whether you're just starting out or you've been in this industry for a long, long time, this episode is going to impart some amazing wisdom on you that is going to help you take yourself from where you are to where you want to be. Today, I get to introduce you to an amazing individual, someone who, like me, is very passionate about seeing this industry grow. This person I had the honor and privilege of interviewing here is Danny Lee, President and CEO of 4Life, an amazing direct selling company based in Utah in the USA. I had the opportunity of sitting down and chatting with Danny in person just a few short months ago while we were in Utah. And while I was talking to him, I thought we've got to share some of this wisdom with you, our amazing listener. So Danny comes with a history and a background in accounting and finance, which is a very unusual place to start when it comes to being a CEO in the direct selling industry, but a very, very powerful one. Danny has accumulated an incredible amount of wisdom and passion for this industry over his 16 years of working with 4Life, and he shares much of that today. But some of that comes back to daily habits. What you do in your business every day, getting outside of your comfort zone, and the things that formulate a successful business long-term are what you do at the very, very beginning of the journey. Danny will share some of his insights from an accounting and financial point of view all the way through to a daily habits point of view, as well as sharing some of the story of how 4Life came to be. I know you're going to love this interview as much as I did, so grab yourself pen and paper because, as always, Danny's going to drop a few really powerful golden nuggets for you in this episode. So no further ado, I'm going to hand over now to Danny. Tune in and enjoy. Well, hello there and welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am so excited to be joined here by the amazing Danny Lee, the President and CEO of 4Life. Welcome on in, Danny.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's great to be here with you.
I am super excited to have a bit of a chat today. We got the chance to meet in person in Utah recently. I mean, we've met several times before, but we actually got to sit down and have a good chat about the 4Life story. And I said to you, I really, really want to share this with our listeners. So I'm looking forward to talking with you today about how the whole company started, where it all began, and where it's going today. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about Danny? And I'd love to hear a fun fact about you.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know that I'm very interesting as a person, but I grew up here in Utah. I was born in Salt Lake City, not far from here. I can look out the window and see, kind of where I was born, and grew up here, went to the University of Utah. I actually did serve a mission overseas in Argentina, learned Spanish there, and spent time in Alabama as well as a missionary. But I studied accounting and finance, which, again, not very interesting. But I did go to Silicon Valley after I graduated and was in the tech space, lived in that whole dot-com bubble. Very exciting time. It's hard to think it's been over 24 years now since I went down there. But it was a great foundation for my career. And then ended up back in Utah, also at a .com, probably not well known internationally, but Overstock.com was, we felt like we were competing with Amazon back in the day, but helped take that company public. And then after that, ended up at 4Life. So made an interesting jump from e-commerce and kind of the electronic payments world to direct selling. And but I've been married now over 25 years. We celebrated with a nice 2-week cruise in French Polynesia earlier this year, and we have
Oh,
5 beautiful children. 2 are married, and our youngest is just wrapping up 8th grade. She's 13 years old. So we've got some kids still in the home and some married and off and out there in the world. So that's a little bit about me. And something interesting, again, probably not terribly interesting, but I've traveled to over 70 countries. And so I've seen
wow.
a lot of the world. And the more I see of it, the more I love it, the more I love the people on it. So that's somewhat unique. Maybe not in this space, but I think in most circles, that's pretty unique.
I think that's pretty cool. What's your favorite country? Where would you go back to in a heartbeat?
Well, I really love Peru, and I've been there a number of times, and I enjoy Peru because the cuisine is so amazing there. So you've got some great food, kind of a fusion of Latin America, Asia, all parts of the world. You have some of the world's best chefs that end up in Lima. It's right on the coast. It's the Los Angeles of Latin America. But then beyond that, you've got Machu Picchu and you've got Cusco and you've got the Amazon and you've got all of these wonderful things. So it's a beautiful climate, rich in history, so unique. And I speak Spanish, and so I just love being immersed in that culture. So that's always a country that comes to mind when people ask what your favorite place to go is. But there's so many
Yeah.
places. In fact, I haven't been in Tasmania, but I did love my time in Australia and New Zealand, and we'd love to go back. And so that's just a place. In fact, we were watching a movie the other night, and I leaned over. It's The Fall Guy. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's got Ryan
Yes.
Gosling. But I leaned
Yep.
over to my daughter, the 13-year-old in the theater, and just like, "Hey, Dad's been on that bridge, or in the opera house there." So, in
Yep.
fact, we did some sailing there in Sydney Harbor, and we were racing with some other yachts, and that was one of the best times I've ever had in my life. I just was on cloud nine that day, and it was
Yeah.
raining, and we were racing through the harbor, and oh man, so I do have a love for Australia as well, and would love to get back there. My father served a mission for our church in Australia as well, so
Oh,
I need to take
wow.
him with me next time.
Well, look, you're definitely missing out by having not been to Tasmania. That is a part of the world you want to, and we rival Machu Picchu. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
no, that is. I'm interested that you say Peru because It's definitely been on the bucket list for me. So, you've just given me another reason to like make sure that I like recheck my bucket list because got to get there one day. I think that would be an incredible place to go. But
yeah, you
I
won't
will
regret it.
say one of the things, and I think we actually had this conversation when we were chatting in person, but it's really fascinating. I think I was talking to a couple of people at the DSA conference that had actually been to Australia and were commenting on the fact that we have got all of these creepy crawlies here and how the thing that New Zealand have against us, because there's a bit of that rivalry goes on between Australia and New Zealand, is that they don't have any creepy crawlies at all. But you come to Australia and we've got nine of the world's deadliest snakes here, or is it 10? And of course, spiders that really are like just monsters. They're huge and they're ugly and they're horrible everywhere. And so, it's kind of like this, you've got the jungle and then you've got the cleanscape over there in New Zealand where you don't have any of that.
It's true, and we shouldn't, but sometimes in America we kind of lump Australia and New Zealand together and we know that's not the case. But when we did get to New Zealand, somebody did brag about there not being any snakes there,
Uh-huh.
and
Yep.
I have to admit that that's not a bad thing for your
It's
brand,
pretty
right? Like, oh,
attractive, really.
no
If you don't
snakes,
like,
like that sounds like a good thing. But
yeah,
Australia,
well,
you guys can brag because you have that reputation for just being tough. And Australia rules football and the outback and all these things. We love Crocodile Dundee. So,
yeah. Yeah,
there's a
we
lot
are.
of
I
joy.
mean, Crocodile Dundee is exactly what it's like. You come here and we're all wrestling crocodiles over here. That is an everyday life for us. They're in our backyard. In all seriousness, I know we're going to get to our chat in just a sec, but I will say I have been to a part of Australia where wrestling crocodiles is a very normal part of life. One of our favourite places, and my Darwin friends right now are going to laugh, but Darwin, up the top of Australia, is one of our favourite places to go. And we love to water ski. And we've got a friend up there who's got a private water ski lake. And up in Darwin, crocodiles are just literally everywhere. They are. You've got to be very, very careful of them. And there's saltwater and then there's freshwater crocodiles, and the saltwater crocodiles are the more dangerous ones. So there are a lot of beaches. In fact, you probably wouldn't swim at a lot of the beaches in Darwin because of the crocodiles that are right there. But in this private freshwater water ski lake, I didn't think anything of it. And we're out there skiing, and I asked our friend, why is your lake safe and all other places are not? And he said, our lake's not safe. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, well, it's only safe because we go spotlighting at least once a week, and we find the crocodiles and we pull them out. He said, but we could miss one pretty easily. He goes, that's why we dry start and we don't get in the water. We start on the dock, on the pontoon, and we land on the pontoon. We stay on top of the water. And he's telling me this while I'm floating in the lake.
I was going to say, that's a lot of pressure to not fall and to stay on those skis.
That was the day I learned to dry start, and I was determined. There was like, if you ever needed motivation to dry start, I had it right there. So
Absolutely. Wow.
I did my best skiing ever that weekend. I learned a lot of tricks very, very
That's
quickly.
the reputation I'm talking about.
I know, right? So there you go. And I said, what do you do? This was funny. What do you do with the crocodiles when you catch them? And he goes, oh, we sell them to somebody who makes handbags for a local market. That is the most Australian thing I've ever heard.
Love it.
So I want to hear, Danny, about For Life. First of all, how do you go from the background that you've had, the education that you've had, into direct selling? That's a big shift in career. How did that all come about for you? Because you've been around with For Life for a long time.
Yeah, great question. The first shift came at the previous company, the e-commerce company, where I guess I had impressed the CEO enough to where he thought I didn't belong in finance. In fact, he said, we don't want you being the referee or keeping score anymore. We want you out catching touchdowns. So it's kind of a backhanded compliment in terms of, yeah, we like you, but we don't like accountants and finance guys necessarily. So he convinced me to move over to operations, and that was a pretty big leap. You know, mentally, you've studied. I have a degree in finance. I have a degree in accounting. I was a certified public accountant in the state of California. I had this whole career path, you know, of moving up this track towards CFO. And then he asked me to just change. And so, but I did, and I've never looked back. I've always loved the operations of the company. And it's been great to have the foundation of accounting and finance and be able to read financial statements and understand that world, because I think that's critical as an executive of any company. It's the language of business. So that was the first transition. And then when I found myself without a job, you know, you're much more open to options. And so somebody reached out to me about a CFO job at a local company. And I said, yeah, I'm interested. But when I went to meet with that person, who's the CFO of For Life, it turned out I was being interviewed for a job at For Life. I didn't really realize it at the time. A position had opened. And next thing you know, I was there. And I have to admit, I had some apprehension, because I knew somewhat, you know, some little bit about direct selling. My mother's been involved over the years when I was a young kid. So I've got some good memories of it. And I know that it helped our family, but I also had some apprehension. But the people that were at For Life that I knew the CFO and I knew the president. I'd worked with them when I was a younger kid. And I knew they were great guys, great people of integrity, smart, capable. And so I knew there had to be something of substance at For Life and with direct selling. And so I jumped in and I haven't looked back. I've been at For Life for the last almost 16 years now.
Yeah, wow. And so tell us a little bit about the For Life story. How did the company all come about? Because that in itself is quite a unique tale.
Yeah, so the founder, David Lisenby, his mother was definitely into natural remedy and supplements and herbs, vitamins, all of those great things for the body, and was really a pioneer in that regard. And from my understanding, has published several books in that realm. And so he grew up in that environment, and he grew up with a value on health and good health, like many of us do, but he was searching for something that would be unique and that could be helpful, not to just his family, but to the world. And he came across a patent on an ingredient, well, really a molecule called transfer factor. And there was a patent to extract this molecule. It's a really a small peptide or protein from cow colostrum. And he studied it immensely, and he learned that this was something discovered back in the 1940s by a Dr. Sherwood Lawrence at New York University. And it's something that he discovered, this doctor, in human blood. And he was demonstrating the ability of through science to transfer immune system knowledge from one human being to another. And that this molecule exists in other fluids or in other things in animals, and primarily in cow colostrum made the most sense. And it's an ingredient that you can commercialize and get your hands on somewhat easily. And so he decided to license the patent, commercialize it, and get out there. And he had a background in direct selling, and he thought, this is the type of ingredient that requires a person-to-person explanation, a little bit more detail. It's not something you can really just put on a retail shelf and have it sell itself. So he chose direct selling in terms of the business model to take transfer factor to the world. And early on, there were some struggles. And there came a critical moment in the company's trajectory where they just thought, gosh, we may not be able to continue on with this endeavor. As much as we believe in the product, we know what it's done for us, we just don't have the finances maybe to continue. We're not getting the traction that we need. And that's when his wife, Bianca, stood up and said, look, if I need to go down on the street corner and sell this product, that's what I'm going to do to make sure that we're successful. And it was this emotional turning point for the team at that point in time to give them the courage to move forward. And it wasn't long after that they came across some great leaders and really started to have some growth. And for the first 16, 17 years of the company, there was just nonstop growth. And we were able to expand into having offices on the ground presence in 25 countries around the world and doing business in about 60 or 70 countries right now. So it's a great story, and obviously lots of things happening in the last 26 years since that we've been in business, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, wow. I love that story about Bianca and how she's come up alongside of him. We often talk about having, a support crew around you that believe in you more than you believe in yourself, that you've got to share your vision with, because sometimes they need to, be the one to step up and go, no, you're not quitting. You need to keep going. How many years into the business was this happened where she just said, nope, you're not giving in?
It was fairly early on. I want to say it was about 2 or 3 years into the business.
Yeah.
So, they had mortgaged their own home. They had put a lot of personal finances. Friends had helped finance the business, and, a lot riding on it. But it was that moment when they look back and say that was the inflection point.
Yeah. And what do you think was so powerful about that moment? Was it the emotion that came into the business and the passion that came into it at that point? Was it the fact that he had people in his corner? What do you think it was that took it from where it was to the next stage? Because it sounds like it was a very pivotal little time there.
Yeah, I think in relationships and couples, there are usually complementary attributes that people have. And I would say David Lisenby, the founder, is a little bit more pragmatic, logical, very formal person, and somewhat conservative, whereas Bianca, more of a fireball, kind of the heart of For Life. And her background was being on stage and in acting and entertainment, and just a lot of great emotion and literature. She had this background in arts and literature, and she just that courage that she had also, I think that courage emboldened everybody else and just said
Mm,
yes. It
yeah.
reminded them of why they started the business. This ingredient, so unique. It's not a vitamin. It's not a mineral. It's not an herb. It is something that has been clinically proven now to activate your immune system within 2 hours. And they knew they had something special. And it was
Yeah.
just a matter of not letting anything get in their way.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting you say this because I know that a lot of people in this industry, and we're speaking on this podcast to a lot of distributors as well. Many of our listeners are people who are consultants for various different companies all over the globe in direct selling, and all of them believe wholeheartedly in the product and the company that they're with, but often struggle with coming up against that adversity of growing a business. And it's that struggle between, I really believe in what I'm doing and I can see where I'm going versus I just can't quite see how I'm going to get through this struggle right now. What do you think is given that, because I just want to point out that even companies that are really successful, like Full Life has become, and often I think we don't look at the company that overarches the distributor as the one that might have also been through a very similar struggle in those early stages. They've just got past that point. What do you think is the key ingredient for somebody to grow a successful business, big or small, when it comes to, it's not, you got to have a bit more than just the belief and the passion, right? There's got to be something else in there to keep you going, because I think in every business there comes a point where you got to make a decision. Do I quit or do I keep pushing?
Yeah, that's a deep question. And, you mentioned courage, and I think that's a big part of it, but it can't just be blind courage. There has to be some strategy. There has to be some evaluation of the assets and resources that you have as a business
Yep.
or as a business builder, and a determined thought process for how to leverage those things.
Yep.
Because we all possess different strengths and different assets, skill sets, but you need to identify them and work with others to determine how to best leverage those things. And that goes for individuals or for business. And I think that's what we've done as a company again recently, as we've kind of hit more of a plateau stage. We've just tried to evaluate, well, what do we have that's unique? What are the assets that we can list out and resources? And then try to really determine how do we leverage those? Because it's easy in business, whether you have a company or you're an entrepreneur and as a direct seller, to just go in so many different directions. But if you can really just focus on what makes you unique and what provides value, I think that's the best place to be. You're most comfortable there,
Yeah.
and that's typically what's gotten you where you are in the first place. And so, if you can define those things, I think that's a big deal, because again, courage is important. Charisma can be critical. Surrounding yourself with great people is also important, but you have to have a plan. You really do need to have a plan, and plans change, but you should have a plan, and that will help provide direction and alignment with those that you're working with.
Yeah. And you just mentioned as well, working out what what's unique about you. And I just want to clarify, like, you're not talking about what it is that makes the product and the company stand out as much as what is it unique about you in your business specifically, right? So if you're a distributor, you're not just looking for what are the things about the product and the company that make my business special. It's also you, the individual, right? And what you bring to the table.
Absolutely. In fact, the owner of For Life, who I mentioned, David Lisenby, he also owns a company called Personalysis. He's always been really big on personalities and identifying your traits, your strengths, your weaknesses, your blind spots, and doing that with those that you work with, and trying to make sure that there are complementary skills on an executive team or at a company, or if you're building a network. You kind of want to make sure that you are attracting people that have complementary skills and leveraging those skills. Somebody might be a great MC, Whereas they may not be great one-on-one with people.
Yeah.
Somebody might be a great operator, a great planner. They might be great at organizing. And the larger your team becomes, the greater breadth you'll have of talent and experience. And it's important as a leader to try to identify those strengths and those talents and put them to best use.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that some of those talents can rub off on other people, and you can develop them yourself. So it's important. Yeah, I'm not just talking about products or ingredients or services that might be unique, but the human resources that you have that are unique.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful stuff, and really important to remember. You've just said as well that doing that gap analysis too, like recognizing where your weak points are. I remember Richard Branson made the comment when asked, how he decides who he hires. He says, "I always hire people that are better at me at doing the things that they do." He says, "I don't ever hire anybody who, he said that is less skilled than me in anything. I always look for people who are better than me." And he said that way I can ensure that my organization is always growing. And I think sometimes we ignore our weak points and we focus on our strong points. But let's just say that there's someone right now who's going, "Okay, great, but I'm not good at planning and goal setting." And you've just said it's really important to have a plan. What advice would you give to someone who maybe hasn't had a business before? They've stepped into direct selling for the first time. They're aware because they're listening to this podcast and you're just repeating something that they've heard before, which is you need a plan in business if you're going to be successful. But they're wondering, where on earth do I start with that? Because this is not something that I've been skilled in previously. What advice would you give them right now to I guess start stepping in the right direction to come up with a good business plan?
Well, yeah, it's not probably something that they would want to hear. None of us ever want to hear that we need to do something that we're either not good at doing or we don't enjoy doing. And for example, gift giving is a weakness of mine. I'm not good at giving gifts. I'm not even good at receiving gifts.
I feel like the love
And
languages is about to come out in this conversation.
yeah, I did. Yeah, is that an international thing? So I don't enjoy it. There's certain aspects of my job that I simply don't enjoy as much as others, but you have to still do them. You have to face that. Not everything in life can be what you want to do. And so there has to be discipline, and you need to probably plan out those times and schedule yourself and say, okay, I'm not good at planning or setting goals. It's not something I enjoy doing or holding myself accountable to those plans and goals, but I know it's critical. I believe that it is. And so I'm going to make time in my schedule to do that. I'm going to sit down and force myself to do that. And I think if you do that and exercise that discipline, you will find over time that it becomes easier, it becomes more natural, and you'll see the value in doing things that are meaningful and necessary. You may not ever get to the point where you love doing it, but you will get better at it, and you will at some point, I think, see the value in having done it.
I think that it's like that with anything, right? Sometimes we learn to love the things that help us to grow and to be the best version of ourselves. And, one of the things actually, it's because this was where I kind of thought we'd chat about next was the accounting side of things. And everyone just collectively went, "Oh my gosh, seriously, Sam?" But no, I want to talk about finances for a minute, because when I first started my business, I was a bit like the Bianca. I love speaking to people. I love connecting with people. I love teaching. I love creating. I love building things. I look forward. I'm very vision focused. So when I started a business for the first time, I came into this initially 10 years ago with no knowledge of how to run a business. And in the first year, I nearly crashed and burned very quickly because I didn't understand I didn't know what P&L was. I didn't understand how to manage my finances. I wasn't paying myself because I didn't understand how to measure profit, let alone make it. I just, quoting people, still to this day, by the way, quoting and charging people is the thing I least enjoy. That's why I've got Greg, because if he wasn't here, I think I'd do everything for free because it's all about the love of it. Unfortunately, that's not how you grow a successful business. But my accountant, who luckily is actually Greg's closest friend, sat me down and said, if you don't learn to love accounting, you are going to crash and burn. You cannot run a successful business this way. And I said, I don't know how. I'm not good at this. I don't do numbers. I'm not organized. I'm not a paperwork person. And he said, become one. Because if you don't become one, you not only can't grow this business, but you can't be who you need to be for the people around you. People are relying on you to teach them, and you need to show up, which means you need to become successful, and you need to get good at this. He said, so I'm going to sit you down. I'm going to teach you. You are not going to outsource this, because I was trying to get people to handle my accounting for me. He said, I will do it for you in the long run, but only after you've learnt it. Because one of the things you've got to remember is you can't manage and measure the success of someone that you're outsourcing an important task in your business to if you don't understand what they're doing. And a lot of people will outsource things like accounting, social media, marketing, and they aren't able to tell if things are going well or not, because they're relying on somebody who they can't measure. So they can have these conversations with someone who's going, hey, you're paying all of this money for me to do your social media for you. It's going really, really well. You're getting heaps and heaps of views. And if you don't understand that views that don't translate to sales means absolutely stuff all, then of course, your business you're putting money out there for nothing. It's not helping you. But if you understand that what your outcome is, or your objective is, and how you can measure that, it's really important. So now, of course, when Simon pulls us in for an accounting meeting, I'm quite proud, because I understand, first of all, some of the jargon, not all of it. But I also am able to look at those graphs and look at those lines and look at those numbers. And while I don't manage it anymore, I can understand what he's telling me. And I know what needs to be fixed or changed. And I know what questions to ask now as well. The funny thing about that is I've gone from hating it, and I still don't love those meetings, but what I love is every week when I sit down, and I still every week personally manage all of the accounts and the reconciling. We do have someone that does that, but I come in and I overlook it all every week, because I now take joy in actually seeing that and seeing what's going well, what's not, and the growth. And I just want to come back to understanding the finances of a business for a sec, because you said at the start of this, Danny, that's the heart of a business, of course, is the finance side of things. I think a lot of distributors don't think about the financial element, and you were talking about the success of a business needing to have that. You need to know what your resources are, and you need to know where the financial side of things is. One of the great things about this industry, of course, is that there's no overhead, or very little overhead, for someone coming in. But what are some of the tools that you would recommend for a consultant or distributor in direct selling when it comes to the financial element, to be able to grow a successful business and start off well? I know that was a very long-winded question, but I'm
Yeah, I think I followed you through that, and a couple of things. Number one, you got to the point where you understood accounting, and now you even have some enjoyment in there. Again, I don't know that will always
really,
happen
yeah.
with things that we don't enjoy or want to do. But ask yourself this question: when's the last time you intentionally put yourself in a zone of being uncomfortable?
Mm.
Because it's really when we become uncomfortable that we'll start to grow. And we're typically uncomfortable when we're doing things we're not used to doing, whether that's public speaking or exercising, or pushing some other aspect of our lives and going beyond what we're used to doing or comfortable doing. But that's when the growth happens. And so it requires discipline, and it requires planning and doing that. And so congratulations on getting to that point. But what would I recommend to distributors, direct sellers who have got a good income, and maybe they've built an organization, or there's significant enough income, like you were having to review it on a weekly basis. we've often said, man, if we could also teach our top leaders how to manage their personal finances, we would be probably a lot better off because as a company, because many times, and you can see it with athletes or anytime somebody comes upon a fair amount of money pretty quickly and they don't understand how to manage finances or how to run their business, they fail. And luckily, with direct selling, you also typically have this ongoing income you can count on each month, but it doesn't mean you're managing your finances well. So, but there are so many tools out there now, and so many people that are out teaching basically the same principles of personal finance. And one of them, I think you already mentioned, paying yourself. Along with that goes making sure you're saving a certain percentage of your income.
Yeah.
And, because even though you're likely an independent contractor in this line of business, you, in fact, because you really need to make sure that you're planning for retirement. The
Yeah.
day does come where we stop working, where we are no longer generating maybe as much income as we used to. And so the only way to prepare for that day is to save and to plan for that. So whether it's YouTube or books, I mean, there's people I could recommend, but they're not hard to find. People who teach very simple principles of personal finance and savings. These are very important things. Paying your taxes are very important things to do, responsible things to do
Yeah.
to make sure that your business can survive as long as you want it to.
Yeah. See, I'm just going to start off by saying, guys, I didn't word him up about the comfort zone thing. This is actually something we talk about almost on a daily basis inside of our membership groups, and it comes up on this podcast almost every week. My favorite quote, which actually came from my first mentor, who is now the owner of a direct selling company, said, you've got to get, when I started this business, she said, Sam, you've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable if you ever want to be successful. So I live by that. It's up on my wall, and I remind myself of that every day because it's so true. It's those things we don't grow within our comfort zone. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. But also, it's really interesting because one of the things that, I had to tell my kids early on, they were, when they started earning pocket money, and I was watching this behavior and I thought, why do I do things the way I do, particularly when it comes to money? I had to retrain myself through using one of these, and again, probably one of these online trainings that all of us have access to when it comes to managing my finances. The reason the business went from nearly folding in 12 months to being really successful is because I stopped and I actually started to segment money and put it away so that when it came to tax time, it was already there. When it came to paying wages, it was already there. I wasn't sort of divvying everything out of one big well. And I began saving. And I asked myself the question, why is it that I behaved that way initially? And why is it that we're seeing, the kids now are starting to become a lot wiser when it comes to managing their finances because there's a different messaging coming out there. And I realized one of the biggest things was that what we do with a small amount will become our habit with a large amount. And so if you're not doing, a lot of people will use the excuse, I will do it when. I will put money aside when I have more. When I get this, I'll do that. I'll change my habits. When my business grows, then I'll start, investing in people and training people. When I earn this much, I'm going to start taking care of my health. And the thing is that however we start is how we finish. So you've got to start the way you intend to finish. If you want to be saving when you're earning $1,000 a week, you've got to be saving when you're earning 10, because you're not going to change. At what point are you going to change those habits? When it ticks over at 500, you can tell yourself that you will, but you won't, because your habits are formed at the $10 amount. And so with our kids, with the pocket money, we started to get them segmenting their money, percentage wise. I'm going to put away I get my $10. I'm going to put away a percentage of savings. I'm going to pay myself some spending money. I'm going to invest in something that's a legacy or vision of some sort, whether I'm giving back to the community, whatever that is, but getting them to do it early on Because otherwise, when they start earning, and we've got one of our kids now is earning in excess of $600 a week working casually at a restaurant, which is a lot of money for a teenager. I'm so proud of him because I'm watching him he's struggling financially. He doesn't have a lot of money to spend, but it's not because he's spending it, it's because he's putting it away. And I'm thinking, that's because he learned to do that at $10. And so, I think it's like that with every element of a business. It's not just the finances, it's also the things that you might not be doing habitually because you're waiting to get bigger or to grow or to have more people in your team. Would you say that there's some things that we should be doing even from a team development point of view when we have one person and when we're first starting out, that in order to develop the business that we're seeing down the track, again, from a distributor perspective?
Yeah, I really think you nailed it. I don't know that I could add much more to what you said, but Stephen Covey said it this way: begin with the end in mind. And if you just have one person on your team, that's your team. And the habits you develop early on are the habits you'll continue with when your team is 10 or 100 people, or you're doing 10 times the amount of work that you were doing initially. And I look at my personal life. Luckily, we started budgeting at a very at the beginning of our relationship, and those habits have carried over now, in our 26th year of marriage, and you're just more disciplined that way. Because you're right, if you just keep saying, well, I'll do this later, it's very unlikely that you will. And if you're not saving now, then when are you going to save?
Yeah.
So, yeah, why kids are more apt to be saving in these newer generations than before, I couldn't really say. And some kids in my family are more naturally prone to do it than others. But if you can identify the right behaviors and force yourself to do them, again, it comes back to discipline. And whether it's training your team or personal finances or developing public speaking skills or presentation skills, closing skills, it will pay off. The day will come where you may have forgotten that you weren't very good at those things, or you may have forgotten that, man, I used to be very uncomfortable and quite nervous to do those things, and now I'm not. And the only difference is you've done it so many times now that it's just habit. It's just something that doesn't intimidate you. But you need to keep looking for those things that get you in that zone of being uncomfortable, because it can be honestly a little bit exciting. It should be scary enough to where you're saying, man, do I really want to do this? But it also, if you embrace it, it can be fun. It can add excitement to your life, even as you start to get gray hair like I have.
100%. Actually, I want to ask you this question, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but when it comes to some of the most important habits that you should form in your business, what would you say are the top 3 most important habits to be focusing on forming and getting, push yourself out of the comfort zone? If someone were to think, what are the 3 top habits that are going to help me be more successful right now? What should I be focusing on doing? What would you say they are for someone in business, big or small?
Okay. These might be a little unorthodox, the things coming to my mind, and somebody can just fast forward through this part if they don't like what I'm having to say. But I believe in getting to bed early and arising early.
Yep.
And I think your day will go as your morning goes. And I think it will set the tone. I know it sets the tone for me, but it's hard to get up early if you don't go to bed early. So it kind of starts the day before. So I've lived by this thing called HBT, horizontal by 10. So in the 10 o'clock hour, I'd like to be horizontal somewhere. It'd be best if you're in your room, in your bed, and it's dark and it's cool. But getting good sleep, waking up refreshed, your body and your mind's invigorated, and start with the things that create energy for you. If that's sitting with a beverage and reviewing your why, great, it's that. If it's getting right into exercising, great, it's that. If it's prayer and meditation that drives you and starts your day off on the right tone, yeah, please do that. Scripture study, journaling, looking at your goals. But I think that type of daily habit, there aren't many people that I know that do that who are not successful at some level.
Yep.
And so those are some habits that I would say do that. Um, on the flip side, and I know there's a lot of people that do this, and maybe this works, but I just see people who stay up late, just kind of doing whatever, lingering, watching, mindless entertainment. It creates less of a good rhythm in life. And so you see, I keep coming back to discipline. I think practicing also honesty and integrity,
Mm-hmm.
because wherever you go in business, it's about relationships. And if they look at you and say, well, there's Sam, that's somebody I can trust. I know her well enough that I know that she's honest. And if she commits to something, I can count on her to do that. And you want to be a person that others can count on. And
Mm.
so following through on your word and making sure you take that seriously. When you make a commitment, you follow through with that commitment. So integrity is another behavior or practice, something that you can actually practice to make a habit of being honest and having integrity. And then I would say, make sure that you see people as people and not as objects. I think that's something that a lot of us have to practice as well. And when you begin to see people as people, life gets a lot more interesting. And you find yourself looking outside your own life and caring about others. And that can generate more energy, more drive, and more excitement in life than even making a lot of money. In fact, some of the leaders in direct selling that I have seen be the most successful are those who are doing it because they love helping other people.
Mm. Yep. That's so true. So, so true. I love that. You're speaking my language. Actually, one of the books that we've just read, I don't know if you've read this one, but we did this within the group that I mentor. We do a book club, so we like to be constantly learning and growing in that way. And one of the books we've recently read was the 5 a.m. Club. Have you read this one?
No, sounds like a good one.
It's a great one, and it actually talks a lot about the science behind getting up early. It's not just a thing a fad that people talk about. It's actually better for us. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and what you do with that extra hour, because people often say, I don't have enough time. The thing is, you're just choosing how you're spending it. If you find an extra hour in the morning before the world wakes up, there is so much powerful stuff you can do in that time. And there's actually a little process they talk about in this book as well. It's a really great one. So I highly recommend checking that one out. But it literally changed the trajectory of, we did this with 30 people. We read the book together. And we saw a massive growth in just 1 month amongst the members of the group that read that book in their businesses, because they changed their habits. And it was amazing, the difference that it made. Just that little shift of getting out of their comfort zone and getting up and moving their body, and spending a little bit of time setting their day up right. And I think that was the key. It was, a lot of people right now listening to this going, heck no. But everything is hard when you start doing it. When you start doing exercise, it's hard, but you get fitter, it gets easier. You start getting up 10 minutes earlier tomorrow, and then, in a week you move that to 15 minutes earlier. It gets easier because it becomes habit. And suddenly what was difficult gets simpler because it's becoming, part of our comfort zone rather than a discomfort. So,
Yeah. Well, look, we're creatures who find joy in progress, and we are built for progress. And the minute we stop progressing, life becomes dull, and we lose, I think, some joy, frankly. And so, but there's nothing that says that you cannot keep progressing, whether it's mentally or physically or emotionally. There's so much we can continue to do in life, but it does require effort, it does require some discipline. And what I love about direct selling is it is this endeavor that caters so well to progress, self-development, and building yourself and building others around you. So it's a really exciting place to be, to develop as an individual, to develop others around you, and to find that joy of progress.
Yeah. Yep. So true. And so, Danny, I would love to know what's the mission and vision ahead for For Life. What's the future look like? Where are you guys headed?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The mission is actually, we say together, building people. So it kind of, some of the principles I've been talking about. So
Yeah.
working together to build people, to build those around us, whether it's through health or financially or through service, those who are in need. And that's been the mission from the beginning. A part of the vision, though, is, as I mentioned earlier, taking transfer factor to the world. Is this unique ingredient, this product that we have, our hero product that we know can do so much good. And so that continues to be our vision, to take this to all corners of the world and make sure people know what transfer factor is and how it can help them in so many different ways. So we will continue to do that. Our founder and owner has given us a vision to take transfer factor to 3 million new homes by the year 2030, and we're on track to do that. We have, of course, our objectives. And as you mentioned earlier, we have key results in place to help us understand, as we measure towards those objectives, are we meeting them? Are we getting to where we want to be? And, we have high expectations of ourselves and are expecting big things. And we see some great things happening out there in the world, that despite what the industry is facing, I serve as the chairman of the United States Direct Selling Association. I'm also on the CEO Council of the World Federation of Direct Selling Associations. And so I talk to a lot of other CEOs. I see the industry metrics. It's not the most exciting times in terms of growth for direct selling right now, but I believe in this business model. And when I see the excitement on people's faces about direct selling, and I see the lives that have changed, it keeps you going. It keeps you close to. It makes you never want to leave, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like I don't see myself doing anything else other than this until the day it comes for me to retire and make sure I've saved enough money to get through retirement.
I love it. And Danny, I've got to ask the question because I know you're really passionate about the industry, as am I. And this podcast, for those that are wondering, this is about bringing the industry together. And we love to showcase companies on here because we want our listeners to understand that this industry, when we all come together, becomes stronger. And there are so many incredible stories. There's so many amazing products in this industry that we just simply don't see out there anywhere else in the world. I do get the feeling that there is a lot of this us versus them mentality within our industry, particularly in the health, because there are so many incredibly unique products in this industry when it comes to health. And For Life is one of those incredibly unique products that is amazing. And the question I've got is, what message would you give to others in the industry that maybe belong to a company that might consider themselves as a competing company to For Life? What industry message would you give to those people who are sort of currently thinking that us versus them mentality versus this is one big community and direct selling?
I've seen some of our most successful leaders, the more I get to know them, the more I realize that they are buying and consuming and conversing with leaders of many other companies. And I think that's healthy. Yeah. I think, why would you keep yourself from trying other products, new services, and why not network with leaders and customers from other companies? And as a company, we recognize that a lot of our leaders might very well want to be selling products from other companies. And you just have to have extreme confidence in what you're doing and realize that the world is a big place and there's enough to go around. So is there competition? Of course, but I think we compete more for time and for attention than we do against other companies selling similar products.
Yeah.
And I love the other companies in our industry. I love these CEOs the men and women that I interact with, they're good people and they sell good products and services. And I've never, honestly, in all my time at For Life, been in a position where I thought, man, if this company were just simply not in our way, then we'd be doing much better.
Mm.
I just don't feel that way at all.
Yeah.
And so the scarcity mentality doesn't make sense for me. And hey, if there's a better product and a better company or opportunity out there, then show them to me and let me learn from them. It
Yeah.
goes back to what you quote about Richard Branson. Like I need to hire people that are better than I am at certain things so we can improve.
Yeah.
It's all about improvement. If there's more light or more truth or a better way to do something, why would I not want to know what that is? I need
Yeah.
to be open-minded. I need to, because clearly I don't have all the answers. So
Mhm.
show me more.
Yeah, I love that. Look to others for growth and for the opportunity, and actually, it's. Uh, I think we all know to do this. Whether we do it or not is a whole nother thing. And when I first stepped into my business, I was really I observed something about myself, which was that I was really scared of the competition at first, and I thought, how do I deal with that? And I thought the best way to deal with it is to get right in front of it and to become friends with it. So I'm not afraid of it. And so what I actually did was I made a mission that I would meet with 3 people I perceived to be competitors every week and have a coffee with them, become friends with them, and get to know how I can learn from them. And if they didn't embrace that with me, that was their problem. But I actually did that, and I contacted and met with people I perceived as being competitors, and some of them are now my closest friends and mentors. And the one thing that came from that was I learned to collaborate. And one thing I've noticed, Danny, and I actually saw this at the DSA conference, I don't want to name companies, but for the first time ever in this industry, I learned that a couple of our companies are actually starting to collaborate and create products with each other, so that there's this cross-pollination between companies. And they were companies that would have been perceived as being competitors. And the 2 CEOs came together, and you might know who I'm talking about, but they came together and they actually said, how can we work together to strengthen our industry? Let's create a product together to show people in this industry that we are not competitors, we are family. And they are in the process of creating a product together. And I think that is just such an incredibly beautiful, wonderful thing. And I'd love to see more of that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We'll actually be launching a little bundle here in the fall with a different direct selling company where we'll be selling one of their top selling products and they'll be selling one of ours. Like we'll be selling the same bundle, but each separately in our own channels. And
I
just
didn't know you were doing this too. I totally was not referring to your company just there. In case he's like, oh my gosh, she's just given it away.
no,
That's amazing. Did that come with, how long have you guys been working on doing this for?
no, I was just at a CEO forum a couple of months ago, and a different CEO approached me after a meeting. He had this idea, and like we just stood there and talked for a few minutes, and his ideas were a lot better than my ideas, and it didn't take long to figure that out. And we're just going to give it a shot. It's like I
Yeah.
said, you just want to be open minded, see what you can do,
Yeah.
and just I think you've probably taught this a lot too, but you find success most often through failure. And
Mm-hmm.
you try and you try and you try and you're often failing, but you're failing towards success, towards growth, towards understanding, towards a better version of yourself. And so
Yeah.
that's what we're going to do. We're going to give it a
Yeah.
shot.
I love
It's
it.
going to be fun.
Success doesn't exist without failure. It's part of the parcel. I'm excited for this. I'll be the first one putting my hand up to be a part of that. Thank you so much for being such an incredible leader in the field, Danny. And I do have a couple of fun questions for you quickly before we wrap up. I've got to ask them. I always ask them, and I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say. The first of those is, what is your favorite book to add to our accelerator book list?
Well, I don't know if you've read this. Have you read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry?
I haven't. I've had this one recommended before. It is on my list. Yes. Okay.
It's
So
a
you've read.
good one. It's a good read. And I was always the guy as I came to a stoplight, a traffic light, and it was red. I was always looking to see like which lane has the fewest amount of cars in it, and I got to hurry and I got to pass this guy. And Or I'm checking out of the grocery store and I'm just worried about, did I pick the right line? That line's moving faster than my line. And
Yep.
it's not very conducive to trying to live peacefully. And
No.
this book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, just the title alone indicates to you that there's a need to kind of get rid of hurry in your life and and allow life to come to you, and it feels a lot more natural, a lot more peaceful, and success can still come without hurrying through life and missing the best parts of it.
Yeah. Actually, it reminds me of a book that we're just about to reread in our book club right now. I read this one, and it was, they've just recently made a movie on it called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. Have you heard of this one?
I've heard that title. I haven't not read it.
By Dan Schulman. It's a very unique book. It's very different, but it essentially it talks about the philosophy of being present in every moment, even down to chewing your food, and everything being something that you savor, and you even the awful stuff that you stop and you be present in those moments. Because I was realizing this. Sorry, going off on another tangent here, but we've now got a 5-month-old daughter who you saw at the DSA conference. She came with us for her first American trip. And one of the challenges I've talked about on this podcast before is the fact that I had an intention to breastfeed this beautiful baby for at least 12 months, but it never occurred to me that I would have a baby that was so determined she didn't want to breastfeed. And so at 3 months old, I remember sitting there, just tears pouring down my face, trying to get her to feed, and she just refused to do it. And yesterday I was sitting there looking at her going, I wish that moment where I was upset and I was wishing that moment, in that moment, I was wishing it away because it was a bad experience for me. I wish I'd been more present with it because she was 2 months younger. She was tiny. I don't get that time back. And I could have just sat with her and been present in that moment, even though it wasn't a moment I was expecting to go going the way I expected. It was still a precious moment, even in its challenge. And I think we often, particularly with our kids, as we go through challenges in life, in our business, there are so many times that I saw things as negatives at the time and wanted them to go away. But now I look back and go, that was one of my biggest learning opportunities. If only I'd sat in that moment and really savored it, I might have even got a little bit more out of it than I did by rushing through it. But, it's just a really powerful philosophy. So thanks for bringing that up. I think it's a good reminder for me as much as for anyone listening.
You bet.
Now, Danny, if you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would that be and why?
It's a good question. In the past, I would almost immediately go to flying because I always thought Superman was so awesome and I could just go wherever I wanted. But I've done plenty of flying. I've got plenty of sky miles. I don't need that anymore.
70 countries under your belt. So,
and I think this is a superpower, but I would love to be able to heal people. I think that would be so amazing to be able to heal people of their ailments, and it would just be so rewarding to be able to do that.
There's a bit of a trend with that response in the last few interviews. So you're like the third person to say that. It used to be flying. Everyone said flying, and now I've had a few people saying I would heal people. I think that's beautiful, and I tend to agree with that. I think that's a great one. So I love it. And Danny, your favorite quote?
Yeah. I'm not the guy that has a lot of quotes up around me, but I hear stuff I like. I do live, this one always stuck with me, and it says, wealth comes in having few wants. And I think it's just, there's so much in the world. There's so much we could try to accumulate and hang on to. But I just like the idea of simplicity and just having few wants, meaning mostly material things, and just being able to not have that burden. I think a lot of anxiety in life comes from just having things, having too many things. And I feel good when I actually am getting, things out of my life and out of my inbox. And out of my closet. So
Yep. I agree with you on that one. And last but not least, if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
I would say cherish the moments with your family. And again, it's easy to take the ones closest to you for granted. Sometimes it's easy to think that just because they're near me, that's good enough. But to really cherish the time and appreciate it, I think, always looking back, you wish you could do more of that. As you get older, you get a little bit more sentimental, and you watch your kids grow up and leave. And it's just, I don't know if I'd listen to myself at a young age. That's the tough thing about that question, is would I'd listen and would I be able to implement the advice? But I would say cherish the time you have with the ones you love.
Yeah. Yep. That's a great one and a really powerful spot to leave this chat. Thank you so much, Danny. I really appreciate you taking your time out to spend with us today. I know it's evening for you there over in Utah, and it's start of the day here in Australia. I had had someone say to me, it's great to talk to the future, and so that's what I am for a lot of people. But it's been so great chatting with you, and I really appreciate you imparting your words of wisdom on me and our listeners today. So thank you so much.
Sam, it's been a pleasure. I don't know your listeners, but if they're anything like you, then you've got a wonderful audience. I've enjoyed every minute I've spent with you, and it's been fun. I can't believe the time passed so quickly.
I know. It's flown. I feel like we could have kept talking about a lot of these topics, but hopefully everyone today has got something out of this, even if it's one thing that you can just take and implement in your business. And so, Danny, if anyone wants to find out more about 4Life, we'll put some links and things in the show notes. Of course, you aren't in all countries, but people in Australia can access 4Life through New Zealand. Is that right?
That's right. Most countries, most major direct selling markets in the world, you can find a website, 4life.com, or it'd be mexico.4life.com, or probably australia.4life.com. That's where you'd likely be able to access our products. Or you could go to the main site and then select a country at the top menu and see what products are available in your market. And we'd love for you to try our awesome products.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Danny. And thank you again to our beautiful listeners for tuning in this week. It was great to be able to bring 4Life to you and share a little bit of that story. And of course, Danny's amazing knowledge that you've brought to the table into this incredible industry. Thank you so much for so passionately serving the industry. And I can't wait to see some of your collaborations coming out too. I think that's a really, really exciting journey to watch. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you on the podcast again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.